the leader of the half-shell heroes, stays behind to hold the fort. Here's your look at the NECA toys: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin's Leonardo. From the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic series, The Last Ronin, in a future New York City far different from the one we know today, a lone surviving turtle goes on a seemingly hopeless mission to obtain justice for his fallen family and friends. Based on issue number 3 of the comic, the Leonardo figure stands at 7 inches in scale and over 30 points of articulation. It includes 2 interchangeable head sculpts, interchangeable hands, katanas, and 5 throwing knives that fit into the figure's belt. Comes in a collector-friendly window box packaging with open front flap, featuring a customized illustration by the Last Ronin artist Ben Bishop. While the master of the long blade gets ready for his last stand, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that were kind enough to provide this sample of the Last Ronin Leonardo that we could have a look at in this review. If you are a new-time viewer, welcome. If you're a regular viewer, welcome back. The tape measure is going to tell us that Leonardo stands about 5 3/4 inches in height, or the leader of the heroes in the half-shell stands at about 14.5 centimeters tall. The territory that we've covered so far is obviously looking at the recent Last Ronin Michelangelo. To compare, though, the two, it seems that Michelangelo is just a little bit shorter than Leonardo. They are, though, shorter still from the original Last Ronin figures. And one correction I did want to make from both of them that I looked at from before, I did say that Michelangelo was notably shorter. Anyone that was following the comics, I completely forgot to mention this in the review as well, is that it's obviously mentioned, too, in the Last Ronin that Michelangelo suffers a secondary mutation, causing a height difference between these ones and the shorter ones that we're looking at right now. Obviously, I didn't mention that in the review, though I'm mentioning it right now in the review of Leonardo. As for accessories, Leonardo comes included with an interchangeable head sculpt that currently isn't on his shoulders. He comes also with a pair of katanas, 4 pairs of interchangeable hands, but just before we look at any of those, looking at the smallest things and most likely to be lost, the figure comes included with 5 little tiny throwing knives. I'm saying 5. I think there were only 5 inside the packaging, but they are loose after all. And the moment you first take off that little plastic tray that goes over top of these, you just want to make sure that any one of these don't fall outside the tray. I think I counted, though, 5. They can be at least stored on the figure's body. If you look at Leonardo, located on the sides of his belt, he has loops right here, so he has 2 on this side, and he has 1 here and 1 at the back, which only then leaves behind 1 that you can, oh, there's the other one right there, so you get a total of 5. You can take the knives and you just slide them into the holsters provided. And again, while you're doing this, just making sure that you're not dropping these. We'll just put 2 in for right now. We'll put maybe 1 there, and we'll put maybe 1 at the back, just to get the idea across that there are storage spaces designated for those little throwing knives. He does also as well come included with hands for holding these. The actual hands themselves. Let's actually look at those. It comes with a pair of kind of gestured sparring hands. We're going to be swapping these hands out for a second. I do like the way they panel line these. Now the colorings, as you can see, they've got the bandages wrapped around his fingers and thumb. 2 fingers, 1 thumb. That's how it works for a turtle. And you can see all this additional, very glorious looking panel lining that they've added all over bandages and again across the fingers. And even like the actual fingernails, they've outlined those nicely as well. The figure also comes included with a pair of relaxed hands. And why I don't necessarily say that these hands are suited for holding like the katanas, if you try to take the katana or wakizashi sword and you try to fit it into his hands, it's just way too loose. Even if you try to fit it this way, I was thinking, okay, maybe I can fit it in between the fingers. You can do it this way. I don't think Leonardo ever really tends to hold the knife that way. So, you know, if anything, he does come with a pair of relaxed hands, but he does come with the best suited hands for holding the knives. It's these hands right here. Easily, you can take the handles of the katanas and just slide them in between his 2 fingers and thumb. You got that way to hold the knife, and it's not going to be going anywhere at all. The katanas, if I could just remove this right now, you can also take those smaller throwing knives, and the throwing knives actually fit in between his fingers. So if you want to have, not that it would fit all that great in between his thumb and his pointer, I mean, obviously you can see there's just way too much space there, but you can actually very easily take the blade and fit it in between his 2 fingers. So there's that way of storing them, or displaying them at least as well. The whole time I'm doing this, you may have already noticed there's all this kind of paint flaking off of these. All of these pegs, by the way, have hinges. All the hinges seem to be covered in paint. So when I am moving these around, you probably can already see there's a fair bit of paint that flakes off. If you want to, though, change the hands, it's just a case of taking the hands that he has already, which are a pair of closed fists, just going to remove them and take them completely off his forearms, and there again, some paint came off. And let's grab ourselves a hand for holding the katana. So we're going to pop in one hand, and then we'll actually do the exact same thing on the other side. Hey, why not? And there's more paint. More paint has come off. Let's grab, again, the other hand. We're just going to plug that in place. And now you have a storage place, obviously for him to be sparring with swords. A good way of displaying him with the katanas. And again, the katanas just fit inside his hands like that. I want to make sure, of course, the blades are facing forward. There we go. You can have Leonardo displayed that way. Oh, but wait, there's more. Sound like an infomercial. What you can also do, too, is you can take the provided katanas, just remove them from his hands, and located on the back of the figure's body, we'll spin this around, you can see the top of his cloak. Now, this back of his cloak is actually loose. If you look, though, at the front, it seems to be attached right here. If you try to remove this, you'll see right away it gets stuck right there. So I'm thinking they've added a little bit of glue. I don't want to pry this off. If it is pegged in place, it is pegged in place. If it is glued in place, though, prying this off is only going to damage the paint, and I don't want that to happen. So while it is loose on the back, you can see that there's loops on the back to store the katanas, but you're probably thinking right away, well, how are you going to store them with this being in the way? Look at the top here. There's a slot right there, and there's a slot right there. It looks like the talking hat from Harry Potter. It looks like he's squinting at you. Basically, you just take the swords and you slide them in those slots, and then when you line everything then up, you can see that it also fits inside the loops. That's pretty creative. You can also do the exact same on the other side. We'll again fit that right through. You really don't even have to kind of lift everything up and kind of gauge where everything's going. Okay, is that lining up? Is that lining up? No. They've actually, they put it right above it. So, to take even just the sword and do this with your eyes closed. I'm doing this with my eyes closed right now. Did I get in there? Watch, I did get it in. Okay, so you can see it fits fairly easy. You don't even really have to struggle at all. The last thing that Leonardo also comes included with, let's just slide everything out of the way here, is an interchangeable or alternate head sculpt. Now, the head that he has right now is kind of more of a somber looking Leo. Just a very, very slit for his mouth. He doesn't really have any real facial expression on his face. Very closed looking eyes, very slitted looking eyes. But again, like with the portrait that he gets right now, just immediately out of the packaging, the head sculpt looks fantastic. I don't know if I would say it's as good as Michelangelo's. Michelangelo, I feel, kind of set the bar pretty high, but Leo's head sculpt is still pretty good. The alternative, though, to that is that he also comes included with this portrait, which is probably going to be the same case as Michelangelo. I'm going to ultimately, I think, just remove the heads and display them with the alternatives, because I think that was also something I did with Mikey. We're just going to remove the head from Leo. I'm just going to pop it off the provided post. It's very easy to actually remove. And just to, again, drive home the idea that if you flip this forward, sure, they've finished this part that covers over his shell, but it clearly looks to be the case that they've glued the front of this, so you can't actually take this off. Don't do it, whatever you do. What we'll do, though, instead, is that we'll take the alternate portrait here for Leo. We'll just snap it in place. There we go. And again, like between the two, even though I think for Leonardo, this face sculpt works really well for this character, very stoic, very heroic, I do like this head sculpt, I think, a little bit more. I have, though, a little bit, can I remove it? There's like a little flex of something right there. Get my finger in there. It doesn't seem to be coming off. Perhaps it's paint, perhaps it's plastic I just can't get off. There's just like one little area right here that's bothering me. It's driving me crazy. Other than that, though, it's a really good looking head sculpt for Leo. Panel lining everything from the teeth, outlining the areas of his bandana, and nice little wrinkled sections below his bandana and above where his eyes are as well. It's a really nice looking head sculpt. Now, again, on the back of this, too, if you're looking at them, the bandanas are seeming to be very similar with one another. This is a little bit wider apart from it, but it does look like they are separate pieces. So if you wanted to, I suppose you probably could heat these up a little bit if you wanted to have them maybe a little bit more exaggerated than what they are right now out of the packaging. The detail in the figure is fantastic. Again, I keep saying fantastic, but to bring back in, though, Michelangelo, the thing, first of all, I like about between them is that, like in the comic designs, the comic suits are all very different from one another. So Michelangelo's and Leonardo's look realistically like something a Ninja Turtle would be wearing in the distant future. Michelangelo's and Leonardo's are very much different from one another. Even like the colors really of the leather or the tan that he has on his body is kind of more of a darker brown here. Michelangelo's would approach it more in oranges. He also does have a bandolier strap here on the front, some additional reds added in there as well. Just again, love the use of the panel lining. If I just move up his arm and get that out of the way, you can see the expert craftsmanship that NECA's put into the pieces. Now, this is basically just an overlay suits. So you could kind of see, and hopefully I can show you guys in this review, this is all like a separate piece that's been put over essentially a larger base body. It's softer in plastic. It's not removable though, so don't try to take this off. It's got all these nice little pockets there on the sides, some a little bit larger than others. Again, there's the storage space for the daggers. You want to kind of make sure that the knives are all the way in there. As you're kind of moving the figure around, you kind of feel, and I've done this a couple of times, you try to move the figure around, you only ultimately kind of start to lift these. You don't want to lose them, whatever you do. But again, like some real nice attention to detail, some nice uses of browns too. So they're not all just kind of the dark chestnut brown. You got some brown, most of the darker brown makes up the majority of it. But you can see like on the sides, for example, there's a lot lighter of a kind of brown straps, and even like the pocket space as well. Those are all being done in a medium brown. So there's a nice little breakup of browns. There's not all just the same color. Got some nice additional white added there to his arms. He's got, of course, the arm guards there as well. He's also got that here also, like kind of covering over his knuckle section too. But panel lines go galore. There's lots of time that they've clearly spent to panel line this figure. So he looks like he literally stepped off the pages of The Last Ronin. Colors of the blue look really, really good too. It's not even really quite a blue. It kind of more of is a kind of a grayish looking blue. And again, you've got some nice additional brown added in there as well. Like all in all, just a really nice looking figure. Is he as good as Michelangelo? Like again, I just feel like between the two, maybe Michelangelo looks a little bit better. I mean, just from my own personal opinion at least. But again, like the figures look, again, so good on these. Some nice detailing that they've also added here for the shoulders. But let's get down to the articulation on Leonardo. If you're familiar with Michelangelo, then you'll be familiar, of course, with the articulation on this guy as well. Michelangelo and Leonardo both have what seem to be dumbbell ball joints. So there's a ball joint, essentially, what I mean by that, it attaches to the head. And then there's a post, and at the bottom of the post, there's a secondary ball joint that sits inside the cavity of the neck. Between the two, you can actually get quite a lot of range for a figure that, really, for considering the fact he's got this area that covers over the front of his face, you can still get a lot of mileage getting for Leonardo's articulation for his head. You can even have a head looking low like this, look like Leonardo's kind of in a, I don't know, depressing stance. But again, like the head looks up, the head looks down, you can move it back and forth, and yeah, you can rotate it all the way around. For the upper torso, despite being encased with all this soft rubbery plastic, still manages to pull off full rotation. Just though, as you're doing it, just be careful that you don't lift these knives. Has this one moved at all? I feel like it has. You know what? Let's just remove these altogether. I know when I'm going to be getting down to the legs, I don't want to bang these by accident and have them end up on the floor. And I forget how many I'm supposed to have. I think it's supposed to be 5. But again, he has waist swivel. There's, again, that ball joint at the top of the torso. You can split the legs. Now, the only thing that he has, though, Leonardo in the comic would have also had this guard area here. This does prevent, it causes a little bit of problems. I mean, obviously this side, you can do a lot more of a splits. This side, though, as you're bending it, you can really feel there's a lot of stress. And I mean, obviously, if you're bending it too much, it's only going to bend so far before the tolerances are met. And then this is probably going to start to split on the side of his leg. So even though this is softer plastic, and even though you can see, by the way, it's attached further down, you just don't want to do a full split for Leo on this side. The leg still manages to move forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel there at the top of the thigh. He does also have a double hinge on the knees. So there's a hinge here. And if I get my finger out of the way, there's also a hinge right there as well. So he not only rotates there, but the figure does also possess a double hinge in his knee. He's got articulation where it counts in his ankle. You can also rock it back and forth. And the figure does also have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. Like the look of Leonardo, I mean, obviously, as you're kind of moving hands around and changing out the hands, there seems to be still a problem where the paint kind of flakes off. It's just a case of wiping this all around the area here. Now, again, like to compare this guy with Michelangelo that we've already had a look at, and obviously this isn't going to be the end of our reviews of the Last Ronin figures. We're still going to be looking at Casey Jones. We're still going to be looking at Splinter. Yeah, I mean, looking at the two, first of all, I want to say, like, I like this head sculpt, I think, more than the one that we kind of started things with. It's a sad-looking Leo. We don't want a sad Leo, even if it's the end of the world, or at least the end of the world as they know it. I do think I like this head sculpt a little bit more, and I think it works a little bit better also with Michelangelo. It's obviously not the case at all that they've reused the bodies. Maybe they've used the arms, again, like if I'm looking at the arms and I'm spinning the arms to the side, do they look the same? Maybe like the bicep, maybe the tricep, obviously there would have been some extensive panel lining differences between the two. You can also as well see too, like the colors of the turtles aren't exactly the same either. Michelangelo's is a little bit more of a lighter lime green. Leonardo is a little bit more kind of a dark avocado green if I was to compare it by foods. Yeah, I do like the fact that all the turtles are very much unique to one another. Gone are the days that they just simply have different letters on the fronts of their belts. like I had said with Michelangelo, I am absolutely loving the new Last Ronin figures that we're getting from NECA Toys. We started things first, our journey with Michelangelo himself. Then we wanted to move over to obviously the leader of the heroes in the half shell, Leonardo himself. Leonardo, though, looks just as good as Michelangelo. From a personal preference, I think I like Michelangelo just a little bit more, but there's a lot to really admire about Leonardo and how he manages to basically store all of his accessories that he has. He's not obviously going to be storing any of his interchangeable hands. Come on, that's silly. No figure's really going to be able to store its own hands. Just even thought of it. I'm removing my hand. I'm going to store it on my belt. Come on. Come on. But at least, though, the throwing knives, they're all placed in, obviously, places on the figure's body. I've left them off here for final looks just because I was kind of moving things around. I did, though, get one in between his fingers. The one, though, thing I wish this figure could have had, though, is that flat sparring hand. Had they only made the slit a little bit bigger between his two fingers, then it could have also stored some of those throwing knives. And I think that hand honestly would have worked, I think, a little bit better than the hand that is also doing really double duty. It's the same hand that also has to hold the wakizashi or katana blades that he comes included with. Love the idea that the swords store on the back of his body, and you don't even really have to move the top of his cloak at all. They thought of that. They added the slits in the top there as well. It still kind of looks like the talking hat, doesn't it? House Slytherin. Anyways, the colors are good, the panel lining is good, and again, what you're getting here is a fantastic rendition of the Last Ronin Leonardo. Kind of a shame, though, that we never got Spider Mausers to come include with this guy. Sort of with I'm not going to, again, give away anything, obviously, if you haven't had the chance to read The Last Ronin, but Spider Mausers play a pivotal significance when it comes to Leonardo and Casey Jones, which we will be looking at in an upcoming review. By the way, though, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that came through and provided the sample of The Last Ronin Leonardo that we had the chance to have a look at in this review. Have you guys had the chance to picking up any of the Last Ronin figures? Let me know down below in the comment section which ones that you have, and if you're also loving this line as much as I am. Again, kind of tipping the hat early, we're going to also be looking at Casey Jones. We're also as well going to be looking at Splinter. Those two reviews will be coming your way, making sure that you're not missing out on anything coming your way. First of all, do me a solid. If you enjoyed this video, throw it a like. But if you want to stick around for more and you want to see those reviews of The Last Ronin, well then, make sure you hit the subscribe. Make sure you turn on the bell. Make sure you come back. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.